Good evening once again, or good afternoon, depends on what time you're watching, or if you're watching us on YouTube. Thanks for joining us for Call the Mayor Wichita. A lot of stuff to talk about, and that's going to include, of course, baseball. Let's get right to it. The mayor's here, Jeff Longwell. Thanks for being here again. Appreciate it.
Enjoy it.
Hey, we've got a lot to talk about. Let's start with baseball, though. A lot of exciting things happening. We are seeing some movement with the baseball stadium, and we did want to mention we have a general manager.
We do have a general manager.
So who is that?
So Jay Miller has been named the general manager. He comes with 40 years of baseball experience, a lot of experience. I think this is his maybe fifth stadium that he's going to be opening up, and one of them includes a major league stadium. So he comes with great experience. He's a baseball Hall of Fame guy, and truly the right person for the job.
Now, I will ask you this again. Baseball Hall of Fame, how important is that to get somebody of that caliber in here for this AAA team?
So the team certainly went after this guy, saying that we need somebody of his caliber, and so we think it was high on their list to do this right, and we're going to do it right.
So how excited is the team right now? What's the latest that's happening
my
there?
word.
There's
So
several things going on, by the way.
Yeah, so just got out of a meeting with them. We're still trying to fine-tune the footprint of the stadium itself and all of those things that go into it, and so we're working through those issues that include all the dull stuff of like where does the drainage go and the sewer lines and water lines and all of those things that have to go in right now underneath the stadium before they start digging foundations. So we're working through those kind of details, and then still working on some facade issues and other treatments that's going to make the stadium pretty spectacular.
Well, we're looking at some renderings here, and I went to the Design Council board, people that are looking at this, to say, hey, what do you think? Some of them were saying, hey, it lacks a bit of a wow factor. Others were saying, hey, great, I'm glad it's going to seat what 10,000 is the total seating out there.
10,200.
Capacity. Now we got like, was it 5,000 seats around the bowl?
So 6,000 general admission seats that are in the lower bowl, and then there's suite level seats, there's a club level seat, there's seats in the outfield, there's some roof decking, and some other general seating that will bring that total up to 10,200.
Suites are important. How important is that to a stadium nowadays? I know
they're critical.
Yeah.
They're absolutely critical in the success of stadiums, and they give it the kind of pop that people want. But the club level seating is going to be pretty spectacular itself. You can rent that club level out. It's going to have food service. It'll seat 350 people. Spectacular views of the river and the stadium itself, and so it's going to be a great stadium. So we took the best of all of these stadiums we visited. Charlotte Stadium, Charlotte, North Carolina, was voted the #1 stadium in minor league baseball last year.
That was last year that Charlotte was voted #1.
And we took all of the elements from Charlotte and added to it, because we're also going to have a museum and some sit-down restaurants in the stadium. And so ours is going to be Charlotte Plus.
That's good to know, since Charlotte was ranked #1 in the country for the minor league stadiums, and we are going to be a AAA facility. You mentioned rooftop. Tell me about that. What does that mean? I noticed some of that in the renderings too.
So there's going to be some areas that you can rent for party decks and rooftop access, and come in and enjoy, the stadium and other amenities, and just a fun, exciting place to gather.
I know it's not just for baseball, so we've got some development calling. You can call the mayor, by the way. The number here is 316-491-5787. Go ahead and call. We'll take your questions. It can be about baseball. It can be about Century 2, which we'll talk about as well.
Absolutely.
We want to cover that. It could be about street maintenance.
We don't shy away from anything.
We actually don't. We'll take any question. So now's your chance to call the mayor. Call us right now. You can be on the show and ask your question. I did want to ask about the baseball field, because it is going to have a bowl. It will be sunken 5 feet.
Yeah, which I think just provides that kind of really cool look as you walk in on that mezzanine level, and great gathering places for people, but just a great atmosphere for a baseball game or other events.
Okay. Well, the question of McLean keeps coming up, and I guess here it is again. Right. Chuck, you have a question. You're on the show. Go ahead with your question for the mayor. It includes the stadium and McLean.
Oh, thank you for taking my call, but I'm wondering about McLean Boulevard, if that's going to be blocked off so that the people in the stadium have access to that, or are they going to have a park, or are they going to leave it there and maybe have a tunnel for the cars, or put a walking bridge for the people? Because I used to work downtown, and that's very important artery for, in rush hour and going and coming to work, and people that like to go down there.
Sure. So we have a team of designers that's going to design McLean as a vehicle passageway, but on game days it'll be closed off for pedestrians. And so it's kind of the best of both worlds. We think that we can design it in such a way that it makes for great gathering places for pedestrians and people on game day. But when you don't need it in the morning, when you're doing your morning commute or your evening commute, it'll be opened up for vehicle traffic, and it'll serve the corridor very well.
I think Chuck also mentioned a tunnel there. Is that a possibility?
So
Could you tunnel
probably not.
under?
It's the water table's too low, and I mean too high, and you wouldn't be able to get a tunnel built in there. And
Okay. And I guess we're not actually dropping the stadium right on the riverfront. That's not part of the deal. But
no, it's going to be moved back because as it looks now, we'll probably move McLean maybe even closer to the river. Make sure that we have some great views both of the river and access to the river corridor, and then room for development.
Now, as far as the development goes, I know we're planning on having a lot of development there to the north side of the stadium as it happens. But what about that? Are we having people on board yet, or are we waiting for some of the plans to kind of finalize here? And then has anybody jumped on board yet and said, I'm going to put a restaurant, or I'm going to put a grocery store in there?
So there's a number of partners that are coming together for the private development, and they haven't released all of those plans yet. But they're excited about the opportunities to build out the baseball village. What we do know is cities that have built a catalyst site of this magnitude have reaped the benefits of development. You can look at Raleigh or Charlotte or Oklahoma City or a number of cities that this truly became that wonderful catalyst site for development to take place.
Well, I know Oklahoma City, you mentioned the word catalyst site. That phrase, Oklahoma City has done this, and they've done quite well with getting business to come in there.
Right.
I know many of us have been down to Oklahoma City.
Absolutely.
We've all visited these places
Absolutely.
and spaces. So if you build it, they will come. I guess that's part of the mentality. As far as the private development goes, I did talk to some people at a church. I believe it's called the Metropolitan Baptist Church out there. They weren't returning phone calls today before this aired, but I did ask what are their plans. I understand that they would at least like to stay in the footprint, but that church... no plans for the church as of right now.
Right, and I understand the church would like to have a smaller footprint on that site, but they are looking at teaming with a local developer that's going to transform that space into potentially some hotels and other space.
Okay, we do have a Facebook question. I will grab this and we can throw it up on the screen. You can call the mayor, by the way, but you can also catch us on Facebook. Is there a way to provide more shade options at the stadium? Now, that's a pretty good question. I know there is an overhang on at least part of the stadium.
Right.
What about shade for the stadium? Not everybody wants to be out in the sun. I know a lot of people enjoy it, but not everybody wants to be out under the sun.
No question. So some of the areas that we're looking at to incorporate into the stadium, maybe potentially splash pads for kids and a shade shelter for families to enjoy some space out there near the outfield. But the stadium itself is going to be much more shaded, and so it'll have basically a roof over the seating portion of the stadium that will provide great shade even for the lower bowl seating.
Well, I know I compared to Kauffman Stadium again. I know that's not fair, but they have some shade where you can get underneath. But they also have some of these areas out there where the kids can play and you can do all kinds of things. Again, refresh my memory. I know we had like 10 or a dozen sites for food that you could get at the old Lawrence Dumont, but we have more than that this go round.
So this stadium is going to have 60 plus some sit-down restaurants and some other opportunities.
Now, what about the kids? You said splash pad. I know we've got, is that going to be similar to the ones we've seen around town where the kids can walk in and you've got the water shooting up? It's not a full-size swimming pool, but the city has several of those, and I understand those aren't, they're not $500,000 to build, is what I'm told originally. I was told $300,000 or $400,000 maybe. Now that information comes from Schaefer Johnson Cox, the architect that I talked to. But so that will be included.
Who was one of the architects on the stadium.
On the stadium, I should throw that in as well.
Right.
And talking to them and their design plans, I talked to some of them afterwards. They weren't discouraged at all by the design council, or excuse me, the design board that took a look at this. The design board just wanted to see a more updated plan. So what's the time frame here? When do we get that? I know we're under a deadline at this point.
So we are, but we have some time for those kinds of treatments. What we don't have time for is laying out where the field itself will go. So they're going to start getting in there probably the 1st of March and digging out the foundations for basically the stem walls that will frame the stadium itself. So we've got to get the stadium, the field, I should say. The field itself and the walls that frame the field itself need to get done now.
And you can make changes to the architectural
And we can make
designs
changes to the rest of that for, maybe a month or more. Okay. But we've got to frame the field itself now.
Well, I know the clock's ticking. We got, what is it, 400?
Yeah,
days
roughly 460 maybe,
play
somewhere
ball,
in there.
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah.
It's soon.
Yeah.
All right, we do have another question. This is not about baseball. You can call the show. 316-491-5787 is the number. You can also catch us on Facebook. So this is your chance to ask the mayor anything you want. You can ask him about basketball if you want, I guess.
Absolutely.
Right? He loves basketball. Brad, we do have you. Go ahead with your question. You have a question about Amtrak. Could we see that in Wichita, Brad?
Yeah, I just wanted to see where we're at in the whole discussion as far as Amtrak possibly coming through Wichita.
So one of the priorities of both the city and the county now, with Councilmember Meissner going over the county, he's been working on opportunities for Amtrak to bring passenger rail back to the area, and that's something that the state's now on board with and working through that process. And we just simply need to connect Oklahoma City to Wichita, and then you'll be able to take a passenger train from San Antonio to Chicago, so it only makes sense to connect that last few hundred miles.
Well, they've already got the connection to Oklahoma City. If they put in, I believe the name is the Heartland Flyer.
Right.
That would go actually from Newton to Wichita all the way south. And you could hop on at Newton and then also go to Chicago or LA from there if you want to take the Southwest Chief.
So the tracks exist, but they need some upgrades to the tracks for passenger rail service, and that's really the only holdup at this point.
Well, and I guess the Amtrak's 75 to 80, I think, is their speed. They could
Right.
travel slower at freight speeds, which is roughly 60 miles
Without
an hour.
improvements.
Without the improvements.
Right.
But they would still, I know Burlington Northern Santa Fe still has to do the study. We'll have
Right.
to see. It's a possibility. Heartland Flyer could be coming through Wichita. It'd be good to see them stopping at
Yeah.
Union Station again.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have another question from Janelle. This is your chance to call the mayor. Call us. 316-491-5787 is the number. I have a baseball question. I will get to that. So we'll talk baseball again. No, we haven't played basketball yet either. I keep
That's
talking
right.
about that.
I know it.
But how early
4:30.
do you get up?
Well, I have to be up at 4:15 to make it to the Y by 4:30.
This is why we don't play basketball together. I'm just saying.
It's kind of the middle of the night.
Whew, it's like working the overnight shift in television. You
Exactly.
wake up in the middle of the night, go to work, and then,
Yeah.
not for me. Janelle, you have a question. Your question is about Century 2. Go ahead. You are on Call the Mayor.
Yes. There's been a lot of talk about Century 2, and I'm a Wichita native, born here, and have lived here 87 years. I would really hate to see that building torn down.
Okay.
Well, I'm with you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to visit about that briefly. My father-in-law was one of the individuals that helped build Century 2, and the family shares a lot of pride in the fact that he was able to work on that project. What we know now is we need to fix conventions, and we can do that. So let's figure out a way, phase 1, to fix conventions that are in Century 2 that don't work in a round building. And then we can figure out how to address the issues with a modern performing arts center that we believe we can remodel and achieve that and have world-class facilities. So we're working on that right now so that the community understands fully what their options are. I believe that we can do that and still save Century 2, and that's been the goal of mine and Robert Layton, the city manager. But we want to make sure the community fully understands, because ultimately the community gets to decide. So understand this: whatever happens with Century 2, it will be a community decision. But we want to make sure the community fully understands what all of their options are.
And two, with the cost of Century 2, remodeling versus building new, are those going to be equivalent, or?
So I think remodeling may be the most economical solution.
Okay.
And do it right. I'm not saying cut corners. I'm saying remodel and have a world-class performing arts center. And I still think it's going to be the most economical model.
You know, we have used Century 2 before as a storm shelter. You may not know this, people watching at home, but you can go into the basement there if there's ever a tornado warning, not a watch, but a warning, you can get into the basement. This is your chance to call the mayor. Mike, you have a question about storm shelters. Go ahead, you are on Call the Mayor.
Yes, I would like to know, with all these people that this new stadium is going to be holding, where are all these people going to go to in case there's a storm hits, say a tornado all of a sudden or a big old hailstorm? Is there facilities for the people to go to?
So the stadium itself is a large bunker, but as you mentioned, there's some great space across the river that can provide a safe haven, and then I'm not sure people realize, but most of the area schools in 259 now have storm shelters in them for the public.
Well, that's a good point. And Century 2, like I said, has been used as a storm shelter for a long time.
Absolutely.
This is your chance to call the mayor, 316-491-5787. We do have another caller. Next caller, you have a question. Go ahead.
Hello?
Hello, you're on the air.
Oh, yes. The reason I'm calling, first of all, I don't get a lot of news. I don't see the TV or anything much unless I'm at somebody else's house. But I picked somebody up at the airport the other day, and I asked her, I said, I wonder what they're going to do with the old terminal. And that brought up the question. She said, well, they're going to demolish it. I'd also asked her, well, what about the old library downtown? She said, well, that's already scheduled for demolition also. Is this correct?
No, that's not true. So let me address the issues with the old terminal first. So much of that old terminal does come down because it's in an area where the new terminal will be expanded to include some additional gates. There's a small portion of the old terminal that they will put a new facade on to match the new terminal that will hold, a few offices, the old infrastructure over there for the IT and computer systems there. The old library, we think we have a game plan to save it. We think that we can put some new partners in that old library building and give it new life, and not just try and make do, but make it a world-class facility that will house potentially some museums. And our friends here at PBS took a tour yesterday, and they would like to call it home on one of the floors. And so there could be a great opportunity to move Channel 8 downtown into the old library building.
Okay, I think you just broke the news there. I believe you did. That would be a great place for a TV station. We've got lots of glass. People could come up and watch the show.
Right.
It's an awesome idea. Your chance to call the mayor, 316-491-5787. Rick, you are on Call the Mayor. You've got a question about the Wichita streets. Go ahead, Rick.
Yes, sir, I do, and thanks for taking my call, and hello, Mayor.
Hi.
Hey, I know sometime later on tonight you're going to be driving home, and I'd like you to pay attention to the street markings out on the street. I'm referring to the white lines and the white paint, the lane dividers and things like that. There's a lot of places where they're pretty much non-existent, and you can't hardly see them at all. You come up to an intersection, you can't see the crosswalks, you can't see the stop lines, and I don't know when the last time you drove out at night during the rain, but they're non-existent, period. You have a hard time deciding what lane you're in. As I understand it, they only have one paint track, and then when they do get out and paint these intersections and stuff, they use such a low quality of paint that's gone in 6 months. I would just like to put a little bug in your ear and see that this might be addressed sometime down the road. I know it's traveled to other large major cities, Kansas City, Dallas, places like that. They've got they use a better quality of paint that actually glows at night, or they might use some reflectors or something like that. So I would just like to pass that on to you and see whether or not you might be able to look into that situation and make safe driving for us all at night.
No,
Thank you for the call.
Yeah, absolutely, and we agree with you. We need to make sure that we continue to upgrade our roads. I can tell you that we don't always use paint. There are times when we use a material that's like a graphics material that goes down on the road that's very durable, and there's times when we use contractors to do it. So it's not just vehicles owned by the city. We subcontract much of that out. But you're right, we need to get around and do all of the roads that are starting to deteriorate. We've put more money into road projects over the last couple of years and continue to fund those at significantly more than we ever have in the history of Wichita, but we're not done yet, and we need to continue to work on our roads until they're all in great shape.
Well, it's not raining tonight, but we'll both drive home after we're recording
after
the show,
dark.
so we'll both give it a look. Hey, Joseph, you are on Call the Mayor, Wichita. You have a question about the new library. Joseph, go ahead. You're on the air.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for taking questions to the public. I appreciate that. Where the new apartments are, very nice apartments at 2nd and McLean, just south of Exploration Place, I didn't know if the city owned that property and sold it to a developer, but I'd always hoped that the new library would have gone there, would have had great public access to the river, and would have had a continuation from Exploration Place along the river as it develops south. I didn't know if the city owned that property and sold it to a developer, which I would have found disappointing, or did they never own it? It just kind of decreased public access to a very nice area along the river. So I didn't know if they sold it or never owned it, and why the library would not have been put there.
So fair question. The city actually did own that, but the access along the river corridor is still owned by the city and the citizens. And so there's from the river to about 100 and some feet up the riverbank is all park and city access. And so it's great space along that corridor. And then of course there's a revamped McLean Park. And then part of that River Vista is public parking. And so you can pull in there, and the rooftop deck, part of the structure is all public parking.
I didn't know that. You can actually park on the roof deck of the River Vista.
Park on the roof deck of the River Vista for free. It's part of the agreement with River Vista. And then there's going to be some other amenities in that area potentially that ties it better to the library. They want to potentially put in some retail and some other space directly across the land from the library. And so you can see some additional amenities that will fit nicely and potentially fit even nicer to Exploration Place in a more convenient way to enjoy both of them. We think it works. It's something that's been planned out, and we think that it's a nice addition to the community.
Okay, this is your chance to call the mayor. Thank you for that answer. I appreciate it. 316 is the number, 491-5787. Your chance to ask anything you want to ask, and we have a question about trees. So
okay.
Let's get to it. Jim, you are on Call the Mayor Wichita. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you. Yeah, my question is about the trees and the shrubs that are planted on the corners at intersections, and the city is just as much at fault as private landowners. You pull up to an intersection at a stop sign, you look left, and all you see is bushes and trees. You have to nose your vehicle clear out the intersection to see if anything's coming.
Sure.
Is there anything we can do about that?
So if you have a specific area that you're concerned with, we would encourage you to contact your council person or someone there in our Public Works Department, and we'll get out there and cut those sight lines back. And we're doing, I think, a better job of understanding what growth will do over 2 or 3 decades and planting those trees in a place now where it doesn't obstruct the view of people doing exactly what you just described, pulling out there. But we do need to make sure that we have safe routes for people to navigate. And if there's a particular tree or bush that's in your sight line, get a hold of the city. We have tree crews that are out every day, and they get out there and make sure that we can trim those back, or in some cases totally remove them, so that we can have safe ways for people to navigate our city streets.
Mayor, do you know, is there an app for that? I know that the city has an app for potholes. You can actually take a picture of a pothole, send it, and the maintenance people
same app,
get it right away.
You can share that same information, or call my office. The girls will help you. I'd be happy to help you navigate the bureaucracy of City Hall, and they do a great job. And so if you call the mayor's office, they'll take care of it too.
Getting back to baseball, I did have one other question. As far as trees and planting, I noticed in all the renderings that there were some shrubs, there were some bushes, a few things out there, but what are we doing for some green spaces? I know we have some green spaces planned for the baseball stadium, but what about green spaces or trees?
Right, it's incorporated into the overall design, and they want to make sure that it kind of softens up some of those entry plazas and provides some shade, and so all of that's part of the overall design.
Okay, well, 316 is the number, 491-5787. You can catch us on Facebook too, so if you've got a question, get it to us now. We've still got more than a half hour in the show. So Don has a question. You are on Call the Mayor Wichita. You're asking about the NBC tournament. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I was wondering about what the future of the NBC tournament will be, given the scheduling of a minor league franchise, and also whether the All-Stars that were brought in for a couple of the summers that were highly successful, because I met them all down at the casino when they stayed there. I worked at the hotel there, so I was just wondering how that future might go out for the NBC tournament.
Sure, great question, and something that is being addressed right now. So the NBC tournament will stay at the stadium. We will have a home actually for the NBC. It will have an NBC museum for the first time in their history, which is a great history going all the way back to Satchel Paige. So the museum component will be on the river side of that whole footprint, and it's going to be a magnificent museum that will provide generations some great opportunities to fully appreciate what now is over almost 85 years of NBC. Now the tournament will have to move to WSU, Wichita State's X-Stadium, for this next year. And then in future years, they may have to play, it's kind of broken up. They have play-in week and then they have championship week. So play-in week may stay out at X Stadium potentially for now and the future of the tournament, but championship week will always be played there on the river.
Oh, it's nice. And I know as far as the plans go, you can already see it in some of the renderings. It looks like an all-glass wall from two fronts where that museum is going to go into the front. So it'll be nice. You bring up names like Satchel Paige. I love hearing that about Wichita.
Absolutely, and it's a great history, and it's going to be fun to see those folks and names and history in that museum where people can interact and be exciting, and great to celebrate the NBC history there in Wichita.
Well, the number is 316-491-5787. Call the mayor. Robert, you have a question. This question is about birds, or I guess I should say geese. Robert, you are on the show. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to know what, if anything, can be done about the millions of geese flying around this city and being a nuisance and, defacing the properties.
Absolutely. And they can certainly destroy property rather quickly. So I can tell you, in some of the areas where they become a true safety hazard, we do some things like oil the eggs, and we have dogs that chase them off. In particular at the airport and in the flight line, we're very careful about trying to be cautious about geese coming in and out of that airport and flight lines to and from. I think that there's a number of signage around the city that says, please do not feed the geese population, and it's technically illegal to feed the geese out at Sedgwick County Park, and we discourage people from doing that. So we are doing some things to prohibit, hopefully, in some cases, the geese from returning, and in many instances from the population to be cut down by oiling the eggs. They won't hatch and that sort of thing. And once they have some, eggs that won't hatch, they tend not to come back.
So that would be one way to get them to stop visiting Wichita.
Right.
One visitor we don't necessarily want here. Robert, you have a question for the mayor. Go ahead. You're on the show, Robert.
Yes, hi. I was wanting to know if we can extend our transit hours to accommodate second and third shift. They work perfect for first shift.
So again, it's something that we're aware of. We have extended transit in some instances in the core of the city, where the Q line now operates until 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday night. It operates till 11 p.m. The rest of the week, but it only operates in a section of town that it covers about a 4-mile stretch of the core of the city. And we know that's not enough. So the new transit director is looking at alternative modes. We may even incorporate, some other different opportunities to expand our transit system so that it can operate in those hours that people need to get to and from. We're also looking at some park and rides and things of that nature that will help improve the transit system.
Now, Wichita State does that with one of their lots. Also in Kansas City, in the downtown area, I know it's a bigger city, but they have a small footprint where they've done transit with an electric rail car.
Right, I've been on it.
Is that a possibility in Wichita? And I believe it's automated. They just have cameras everywhere, and they have one person running it.
Right.
Is that a possibility for Wichita?
So I don't know that we have now the ability to put in that kind of infrastructure based on the cost and that sort of thing. But you know, there's different ways to modernize your transit system and use new technologies and even maybe utilize Uber and some of those other tools that could expand transit in different ways.
Okay, 316-491-5787, excuse me, that's the number. Bonnie, you have a question about the world's largest mural, which we now have in the Wichita area. So, Bonnie, you're on the show. Go ahead with your question.
Yes, I do, Mayor. Yes. It's the world's largest mural, and you can't have access to it. You can't really see it. You got to be up close and personal with it to experience it.
Well, it's one, it's on private property, and two, it's a very large mural, so you can see it from a distance. I know I was coming in on 35 Highway just a couple of days ago, and you could look over and see it on the grain elevator. So there are some areas over there that you could park and appreciate that mural. I know that there are some side roads that will enable you to park.
There are a few out there.
But you can't get too close.
You can't. I know when KSN, we were doing some stories over there, we had parked on some of those side streets, and we got a pretty good look at it. You can always click on the website and get a look at the story, too. So.
Right.
316-491-5787 is the number to ask the mayor about anything. Basketball, I'm going to get to that. I will get to that.
There you go.
It might involve the Shockers, by the way. Did they win last? I believe they
did win.
It's a dramatic win.
Very dramatic win.
It's really good to see.
And we have the aftershocks coming to Wichita.
Which is cool, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So the tournament's going to come here. We can talk about that in a minute.
We'll talk about that. Okay, we have the next caller. Sorry, I didn't quite hear who the next caller was or what the question was, but I believe it's Bob. You have a question. You were on Call the Mayor, Bob. Go ahead.
Hi, guys. Thanks for taking my call. I was wanting an update on Clapp Golf Course and a timeline moving forward.
Okay. So I know there's a committee that's working on that green space in Clapp Golf Course, and I haven't had any updates from that committee that's working on that yet. James Clendenin has put that together and rounded up folks from his district to focus on that, and so maybe we can get an update and present it next month when we come back on the show, but I don't have a great update for you. You may be able to call Councilmember Clendenin and get some idea of the progress that they've made at this point. What I can tell you is the city's committed to keeping that green space and potentially the golf course in some form.
All right, James Clendenin, there it is if you're watching. And I asked you to watch tonight.
Absolutely.
Go ahead and call in, and you've got the answer. So
right.
I feel it's rude to text him during the show, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay away from that one. We do have another caller. Sorry, I didn't get the name again, but we do have another caller. Go ahead. Tommy is the name. You are on Call the Mayor Wichita. Go ahead.
Yes. Hey, Jeff.
Hi.
I was wanting to know how we can better the flow of traffic early in the morning going south on K-15 from 31st Street South. When a train comes up in there, they're allowed approximately 14 to 15 minutes to traverse that area. But if you're going to make a turn, either going south on K-15, which affects a lot of Derby traffic and Spirit Aero traffic, how can we work with them to get the intersection lights so that it works intermittently to keep a smooth flow of traffic going through there? Because I realize that is right at the point of city maintenance and county maintenance, but yet though it's never been addressed.
Sounds like a good question for Gary Jansen. I talked to him about timing of the lights. We don't have that technology yet, but that
we're getting closer.
We are getting closer, and I know that would be coordination between. Well, it wouldn't be city county. Also, it would also involve. Wouldn't it involve Derby as well?
Potentially involve Derby. But
so I don't know how we would do that with the railway system as well. Your thoughts?
So when we get all of the infrastructure in place where we can coordinate that lighting, it shouldn't be a big stretch to coordinate it with other government entities too. And oftentimes we'll work out agreements where we just simply take over that entire section on behalf of all of the governments in there. So it's not a stretch. The hardest thing, quite honestly, is working with the railroads. They can be very difficult. So we've tried to outlaw trains from blocking tracks for over X amount of period of time, and we've been told by now the court system that we don't have any say.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's part of the equation. Now, it's been bitter cold leading up to the show now. It's going to be a little warmer toward the weekend.
Right.
Looking forward to that. So if you're watching this on the weekend or on YouTube, enjoy the nice weather. It's going to be warmer.
Yeah,
but it's
absolutely.
been so cold. And, you know,
It's been
I've seen
cold.
some of the homeless people downtown. We do a lot for the homeless in Wichita.
Right.
Alan, you have a question about the homeless? You are on Call the Mayor Wichita. Go ahead with your question, Alan.
Yes, sir, thank you. I was curious as to why the city of Wichita itself doesn't do more to provide shelters for the homeless people, and instead they leave it incumbent on private organizations and charitable organizations to do that. And I'll hang up and listen to your answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan.
No, and I appreciate that. I can tell you this, that the government probably isn't capable of doing all of that themselves, and so we do reach out to some organizations that we partially fund in some cases. So we take some funding that we get from the federal government and guide that to some of these organizations that provide some great programming for the homeless. But we also have a homeless outreach team that recently has received some recognition nationally for the good work that they do. I can tell you, for anyone that really truly wants to have shelter over their head, we have the resources. Too often we run into issues where there are some mental health concerns where we can't get them.
And I understand too that the HOT team, and they have won national awards for this because they're so plugged in. And I know there's a homeless count that's going out this week to actually count and find out how many homeless people we have. They will go under bridges. They will literally go to areas where they know the homeless people hang out or spend time. But one of those questions that comes up is the mental health issues. Some of these people have mental health issues and they do want some help, but maybe long term it's hard to keep them in a facility. I know Wichita does a lot for the homeless, but some of that is incumbent upon, I guess, the homeless outreach team to find out what the mental health issues are out there. They're trying, but that's maybe kind of a catch-22 there.
So we're teaming with the county this year and lobbying the state to see if we can't put in the kinds of resources in our area, similar to what San Antonio's done in terms of homeless, in terms of resources.
How much have you researched San Antonio? Because they've had some tremendous success out there working on that specific issue.
Great model that they have, and we know that we can maybe duplicate that on a smaller scale. But it's not just putting a roof over people's head, it's providing all of the services they need, whether they need to see an eye doctor or see a medical doctor, or in some cases be referred to, for some mental health issues that they need to have addressed. And so you got to bring all these different agencies together that can provide those services so they have access to that, or you're not fixing the problem, you're just putting a Band-Aid on it.
And I know that the HOT team will be the first to tell you they don't all have mental health issues. Some people are just a hard luck and they're working on it.
Absolutely.
That's part of the course. Hey, 316-491-5787 is the number. You can call us. Hit us up on Facebook too, please. We'd love to see some more Facebook questions. We've only had 2 tonight. Oh, no, we did get to that one. Somebody asked that question as well about the expanding the city bus service.
Absolutely.
Mike, you are on Call the Mayor Wichita. Mike, you have a question about some football, not baseball this time, or basketball.
All right.
Football. Mike, go ahead.
Yes, I was just wondering, is Wichita State football, is that dead in the water, or is there some hope for it?
So, from my understanding, talking to those that can make that decision, that it's probably not going to happen. It's just too big of a price tag. They're talking about, what it would take in terms of scholarships, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of other programming that they would have to also include under the Title IX kinds of acts that they have to deal with now. And I just don't see it happening anytime in my future. But when we talk about football, one of the things we're included in the new stadium is we're going to have high school football games
there.
High school football games at the new stadium in the fall. So that's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I've done a lot of homework on Wichita State football, and it would take a club level sport first to get it going. Then you'd have to start playing some of the lesser known teams. And in addition to that, we're talking probably upwards of $20 to $40 million to get a program like that going. So certainly, Mike, if you know anybody out there that's got a big checkbook, deep pockets, that is part of, not the only piece, but that is part of the equation and what it would take to get football back. I know some of the reasons why Wichita State football went away is because fans weren't attending the games. Not to say they wouldn't now, they probably would, but football, an exciting issue for a lot of people. I know a lot of people would like to see it here, but that's just not happening right now. Joan, you have a question. You're on Call the Mayor Wichita. Go ahead. Joan, what is your question?
Okay, name's John. My question is, the swimming pool that's going to project out over Douglas on the new Hilton. What's the status on that?
So they're supposed to be finished with all of that by, I believe, this March. And so they have a tight timeline. And I drove by there today, in fact, and you can see the pool overhanging the structure. And so they're working on it. And I saw new facade treatment going up today. But I believe sometime this March is their deadline to get it done.
So is this a glass bottom pool?
It's a glass bottom pool.
Very cool.
Yeah, so and they're going to have a rooftop bar and some other amenities up there, but it's right there on Douglas.
Okay, 316-491-5787. We have another caller, Chuck. You have a question about buses as well. You are on Call the Mayor. Chuck.
Oh, thank you for taking my call. I was wondering, are there any plans to improve the capacity for buses to carry bicycles? You know, like improving the racks exteriorly or getting interior racks?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, multimodal opportunities are one of the key areas for us to look at additional funding. And so when we can include opportunities for people to ride their bicycle and ride the bus, we'll provide some potential funding streams for us with our transit system. And so I know the new transit director is looking at not just ways to store it, but in some cases, great places to store your bike if you want to ride your bike to the transit center and then hop on a bus and move around town and then come back and be able to grab your bike. But a lot of different options there that include bikes, buses, and some other.
Transit director, I believe, Mike Tan?
Mike Tan.
I had a discussion with him once, and I asked him about possibility of scooters and possibly bringing some of those items onto Wichita buses. What are the odds of that happening?
So I don't know that scooters are a great fit for the buses, but we're looking at potentially some scooters around the city that can potentially operate in bike lanes, not on the sidewalks, but looking at how we could potentially incorporate some of that.
And they would go into regular bike lanes as well.
And they would go into regular bike lanes.
Okay, 316 is the number, 491-5787. Mary Lou, you have a question. You are on Call the Mayor. What is your question?
Mayor, having been a Delano merchant in 2003 when the replacement of the road over there, Douglas, from 5 lanes to 2 lanes to give us diagonal parking and about doubled the parking over in there. Delano now has really become a destination, and particularly now with the new ball field going in, everyone is a little nervous about where everyone is going to park, in that we thought there was going to be a parking garage. If you had 6,000 cars, 5,000 cars, saying 2 people come in a car to a game and you have a full game, the merchants in the neighborhood, they're concerned that where is everybody going to park in it? Are they going to park and take up all of their business space? Help us with the concern.
Very good question, and I know we've addressed that before. I'll let you address that, but I would ask the question too. The extension on to her, Mary Lou's question is, we had this similarly when we put in the new arena as well.
Sure.
So your thoughts there?
So we had that discussion this afternoon, talking to the developers and the folks that are going to be operating the baseball stadium, and so potentially we're looking at structured parking along with some surface parking that will be right there at the stadium and in the Delano area. And so we know we've got to get parking as part of the equation, and the more we build there, the bigger the need for parking, and they don't want to just have baseball games there. They want to have 200 events a year there, and so it's going to be concerts and winter wonderland and ice skating in the winter time.
Oh, cool.
And
I got to ask you about the screen. I'm a TV guy. I love big
right.
screens, obviously. They're going to have a very large screen out there. Is there a possibility, or is that in the plans? Will they have like movie night or something
That's
like
exactly what they want to do with that large screen. And so they want to have their version of drive-in movie night at the stadium and all of those kinds of neat opportunities. And what a great venue for that. And so parking's part of the equation,
Yes.
and we'll make sure that there's plenty of parking, not just for the stadium, but for Delano, because that is an area that's going to continue to expand and grow. And understand there may be a hotel that's in that footprint, and you got to have parking for a hotel.
Yeah, you say maybe.
So there's still the private development's working through all of those issues right now.
I was looking at it today, and I was right up by the river, you know, kind of on the southeast section of where Lawrence Dumont used to be. And looking out over that, you can see a direct line of sight that goes to Delano. So this is going to be directly plugged into Delano. And one of the issues that James Clendenin brought up, and one of the issues that Jeff Blubaugh brought up, some of the other council members that I've talked to said, we need to make this a direct link to Delano. Could you speak to that for a little bit, how directly this all will be tied, not only to downtown, but Delano as well?
So that's also what's guiding us on some of the treatments that we want to put on the structure itself, and we want to tie it into Delano, and that's why we're using some of those materials that are often seen, you know, some red brick, some limestone, some black metal that will be incorporated into the overall design to fit, you know, that character of Delano. And that's important to not just Delano, but you know, the people that are going to be in that stadium, and making sure that we get it right. We're having conversations with the Delano neighborhood, and we'll continue to have those with the design council to allow everyone to weigh in on it.
Okay, we've got a lot more callers. You can still call 316-491-5787. They say the lines are jammed with callers. That's good to know.
Well, it's cold out, so they're not outside right now. They're
just think he's a popular guy.
Yeah,
I'm going to go with that. Can we? Let's go with that. Ben, you are on Call the Mayor Wichita. You have a question about swimming pools. Go ahead.
Yeah, with the new pools that you're going to make, and then you got splash pads going in some, where are the pools going to be at when they get built?
So we have about 6 locations that the pools are going to be built at, or actually it's locations that have pools now. Trying to remember off the top of my head, I know McAdams, Manissa, Harvest, and then I know Edgemore's a splash pad, Ailey's a pool. So we'll have a map that we're going to present at the next council meeting when we bring that back to the council to look at. I know they're taking it to all the district advisory boards, so there's going to be 6 swimming pools, 6 splash pads, and then incorporated into that, we'll show all of the public pools that are scattered around the city and kind of an overlay on there. But certainly McAdams, Manissa, Harvest, Ailey.
Ailey was the one I was thinking of, because Minnesota will be included on that as well. I see my friend Michael Jones is calling. I know he had a question, so I'll go ahead and ask it for him. He wanted to know, are we going to see an extension of the transit route just beyond the core? So thanks for your question, Mike. I know you were calling. But are we going to see that expand beyond the core, or is that part of Mike 10 and the transportation plan? Where does an extension fit into that, or is there money for that? Can you get grants for that?
So we can, and the more people we have use transit, the easier it is to find federal dollars. And I know that Mike Tan, who is working on that, is trying to find better solutions so we can move more to a grid system instead of the hub and spoke system.
It's a hub and spoke currently.
And hub and spoke doesn't work real well. Grid system certainly would be a better system to operate, but to do that, you've got to extend the routes through east, west, north, south, and so we're working on a plan to expand it so that we can have a more modernized grid system for transit.
We did get another question. Is there anything, and this is from Facebook, so I'll go ahead and grab this. We'll get to the next call. I know we have callers lined up, but is there anything that can be done about all the people that run red lights in Wichita? Do we do as a city? I know if you go to Denver and you run a red light, you can get a ticket mailed to you. They'll mail you the ticket.
Yeah, we don't have the red light cameras.
We don't necessarily do that in Wichita. No. Is that something we would consider here?
So certainly something that we ought to at least take a look at. I can tell you that
high traffic areas.
So we put in specifically the motorcycle unit to focus on traffic issues. and motorcycles can be positioned in some of those areas. It's easy for the motorcycle to kind of hide and watch those traffic patterns, and certainly we write tickets for people running red lights, and we don't catch them all, but certainly trying to change habits so that we can cut down on the number of accidents and certainly fatalities.
Okay, 316-491-5787 is the number. You can call the mayor. Tommy, you have a question about arts and funding. What is your question?
Yes. Hi, Jeff. How you doing? I have a property behind me that is owned by the city, and it is maintained by the city, and sometimes by me. My question is that these properties that exist around the city, what I would like to see as a musician and an artist myself is that my goal in 2 years or less is to get enough funds to build a small stage for local musicians from schools and just local artists to gather in an area and have a place to collaborate and socialize and to coexist with other musicians and artists.
Would that be part of a plan that we could include with the extension or the reworking of a convention space? I know included in the Century 2 plan, you're wanting to do more with the arts. Is that a possibility?
So certainly that's all areas that we can have discussion. I like that idea. We have some great venues around town.
We have a few venues now.
The Wave is another venue that's popular for musicians to go and play, and certainly it's one that the community has really embraced. We have some outdoor spaces that artists could use. The new revamp that I just mentioned, McLean Boulevard, that has the McLean Park right there, I should say, not McLean Boulevard, McLean Park.
It is.
So
yeah,
it's kind of an outdoor amphitheater that exists there now, and so I know it's outdoor space, and he's talking about probably some great space indoor where we could collaborate, but certainly something we could think about when we talk about all of the things we'd like to see in city arts and some of those venues.
Do you play guitar?
I don't play the guitar.
I'm sorry.
I'd love to play the piano. I wish I would have taken piano lessons. Maybe not too late.
7 years. Mom was a music teacher, so yeah. Okay, Willie May, you're on Call the Mayor Wichita. You have a question about contracting. You are on the show. What is your question?
My question to the mayor is that the city contracts, the cleanup of the city building, why don't they hire more minorities? I have submitted 2 or 3 times. The same people get the contracts. I don't know, but 2 or 3 minorities that's got city contracts cleaning up a city building, and usually they give them 1, and they have insurance to cover it.
Okay. So we need to expand more with minority-owned businesses. I know we do some of that. I can tell you, the ones that we hire that actually work for the city, we have quite a few minorities that help clean city buildings. But as far as contracting out, I know that our staff continually does some seminars to help small and minority-owned businesses get an opportunity to receive some of those contracts, and would urge you to visit with our city staff to see if they can't help you and guide you on ways to maybe improve your positioning to help get some of those contracts.
Okay, there. Help. You can go and get it. Vicki, you are on Call the Mayor Wichita. The number is 316-491-5787. You can call. But Vicki, you have a question about keeping Wichita clean. What is your question?
Hello, thank you for taking my call. I just noticed over the years, and I think it's getting worse, the litter and trash and garbage on the roads and the streets. I noticed, for instance, when you're getting on the frontage road off of East Kellogg to Woodlawn, there's a row of little bushes, and the trash under there is growing, and I see that all over 13th and Oliver. There's always trash in the bushes. I think the trash situation and litter is getting worse, and I'd sure like to see maybe some kind of effort made to get people to clean up a little or have some pride in the city. I just think it's so depressing.
Well, thank you for the question. I've volunteered to go down and clean the river before. There are groups that do that, but what mechanisms do we have in place right now for that?
So we actually do some volunteer cleanups, but our crews get out there and clean some different streets and areas of town. We're fortunate to have some great volunteers. There's maybe some other things we can do. I know some cities pay the homeless to get out there and pick up litter. Wouldn't it be nice if people could just show some personal responsibility and quit throwing trash? But part of the problem isn't just the trash, that kind of accumulates in some of those places. Because the wind is so bad, it just kind of blows all of the trash into.
She mentioned 13th. That was my first question. Was I know
how
that
much
the wind
of that
can carry
is
things.
the wind carrying?
But people, if they're going to litter, they're going to litter. So I know that Wichita will give out. You can get ticketed for that.
So
I've
you
seen
can.
It happen. I've seen it happen before.
Absolutely. Our police department will ticket people for throwing trash out the window of a moving vehicle, and again, it's frustrating because not everyone has the same level of responsibility that you and I do, but we know we've got to get out there and clean it up. So we appreciate you mentioning it. It's something that we continue to address.
And I will say this, I was downtown and I was driving by the new cargo facility, which is wonderful, by the way.
Gorgeous.
And I noticed that there were a few bits of trash outside, and I saw some people walking back in. So if you work at Cargill, call the show. But I saw a couple of people walking back. Clearly, they'd just been to lunch. They had lunch with them. And I saw them stop and pick up the trash, and they brought it in with them. So people do care about Wichita. It's good to know, to see that. All right, basketball question. I've been dying to ask you this.
Basketball.
As far as basketball goes, what is the future for semi-pro basketball in Wichita?
So they had tryouts recently, and I think they've now solidified their team, and they're going to be playing at the new sports forum, as my understanding. And so semi-professional basketball is coming to Wichita. I don't remember what their season schedule is, but you can, I'm sure, look it up on a website somewhere. And
I don't remember their schedule. No,
soon we'll have basketball. I think they've named a coach and general manager, and they've narrowed their team down to whatever is allowed to have on their roster, and I'm sure they're practicing right now.
I know that Corleone Young, a Wichita player who went and played in the pros and then played overseas, he's involved with the team, so that's exciting to see too.
The other basketball thing is the new Afterwatch that's the Aftershock. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the Aftershocks are coming to Wichita, and they're going to hold the first 2 rounds of that tournament here. It's a winner-take-all $2 million 3-on-3 basketball tournament, and there's a number of former Shockers that are going to be included on that roster, and going to be playing the first 2 rounds at at WSU Koch Arena.
The Roundhouse, Koch Arena. Are you good enough? Should we get a team together? Could we go?
I don't
$2 million, right?
At $2 million, I'm not sure that I have the skills to compete.
Thought I'd ask. I know you got a 3-point shot.
Yeah.
Thanks for the call. Thanks for the calls today. We appreciate it. We'll see you next time on Call the Mayor. Thank you, Mayor, as always. Good to see you.
Appreciate
you taking questions and being here.
Thank you, Craig.
We will see you again next time on Call the Mayor Wichita, and you can get us on Facebook. Thanks again. Have a good one.